we're striving for when we're striving for truth in some ways is just clarity, consciousness, awareness, deliberateness, right? It's at least we don't have all the answers. We don't know all the information. We're not always going to get it right, but there's at least a level of awareness and consciousness of it so that the things we aren't sure of, when we are making a decision that maybe isn't in line with what we normally do, we know why we're doing it. And we're aware of it. That I think is really important. And I also think as you're speaking, there's because so let's take the medical, right? I'm sure there are somebody in the medical field or maybe family members you have or whatever it might be who could be listening to this conversation or others like it, and they're thinking their own search for truth and how no, but there's information you're not thinking of, Tamara, or there's other things and things you need to consider. And I say that because it starts to illustrate how personal and individualized truth can be, which even as I say that, I
Yeah.
think you and I both know that's part of the problem we have in the world today. Everybody's got their own version of the truth. And most of us think of that as a bad thing, and understandably so. But is it inevitable? Like, is it the only way to be that we only have our own versions of the truth? We only have what we feel. You mentioned gut, intuition, how your body felt, how your body was responding to things. When we try and put this objective truth, which I think happens a lot today by politicians or scientists or different things at times when they break bad, is that actually the issue? We think that's the problem in that we need more objective truth. Is the answer actually objective truth is causing the problem because it doesn't exist? I know it's kind of a weird question, but how do you think about that individual version of truth versus the objective truth?
I don't know if this is a direct answer, but the word that comes to mind for me is transparency.
Mm.
And I think that we've gotten away from um, powerful systems letting us be adults and have all of the information to make our own decisions. Whether that's, for example, when we knew smoking was bad for us, some people chose to smoke. We all make lifestyle trade-offs all the time. I know that donuts are bad for me, but I had donuts the other day. So
Mhm.
um, I think it's maybe not that we need to get so back. I think objective truth can be dangerous too, because then it means we have to make certain groups of people in certain contexts the single arbiters of truth. And I think that we've really got to balance objective truth with personal freedoms. And in that sense, I think that what I'm asking for and advocating for is more transparency, I guess, more so. Just hear all of the facts, hear all the factors, and wherever that leaves you in your personal decisions is up to you.
Yeah, transparency is the right word. I would add to that word, which I think to have transparency, you need humility. There has to
Mm,
be a degree of humility. And I think of this most often with scientists in the good and the bad, right? There's so many scientists I respect, some alive, some dead. And the ones that I find are sometimes the smartest Nobel Prize winning scientists. They'll be the first ones to tell you, like, I'm not sure. I don't
yeah,
know. I don't have all the answers. Somebody else might figure out something that's different. And I think, we just mentioned the pandemic, and there's lots of complex nuance to this, but I think at times where this went bad, where we didn't have transparency, it's because people didn't have humility. They felt like I'm the authority, I have the answer. And maybe they did. That's the crazy thing, right? Maybe they did have the right information, but you're not going to get it received by people when there's no humility, there's no transparency, because all of us have this sense that there isn't really an objective truth. And when you try and position it as there is, it almost discredits you instantly for
almost.
a lot
Yeah,
of people, right?
yeah,
And
it
that's a
does.
big piece of it.
Yeah, and the loss of the art of just apologizing and acknowledging, when we're wrong. That's the other thing that's scary about pursuing truth is, as a parent especially, it means that I am taking accountability for whatever decisions I make with that truth. So in some sense, it's more comfortable to just trust the experts, because then I don't have to really take accountability for the decisions that I make, at their behest, or that contradict experts. But that there's another paradox for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other dimension to this is, and I'm not sure how it plays into it, so let's talk about it, is in a lot of those cases, there's a sentiment of whether it be a moral high ground or a sense of I'm doing this to help other people, right? I'm saying this thing, I'm saying it so declaratively, or I'm holding this belief, or I'm taking this action because I need to help other people. And that rises above everything else, whether it be personal freedom or other aspects of it. And on the one hand, I get that. I understand why that's somewhat of a noble thing and people would want to pursue that. But I think there's also a lot of danger in it, obviously, because when you combine the sense of certainty with the moral high ground, there's almost nothing you won't do. I mean, I mention him often on this show, but Hitler is an example, right? Hitler was absolutely certain that he was right. And he thought he had the moral high ground. He thought he was actually making the world a better place. Now, that's a super extreme example. I'm not comparing anybody to Hitler, but that can be a dangerous thing. But at the same time, we want people to help other people. We want people to be considerate of others and think of ways to help them. So, in the spirit of paradoxes, how do you think about that one? How does that fit into how you?
Man, that is one that I think is such an important personal value and individual trait. I remember back when in my 20s where I was just living so selfishly and I was so sick in my addiction, just toxicity surrounded my life. But I was so idealistic and I took so much moral high ground when I really loved identifying with, if me, mind you, I'm not being generous in my own life. I'm helping no one.
Mm,
But the powerful have kind of appropriated that responsibility and made you think, well, if you support us, then you support helping people. And I'll give you a very practical example. I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and I remember telling her, I was like, I don't care. I'll pay more taxes if it means that everybody gets health care. Which sounds like a noble thing, like as if in my mind, like my taxes are going into a pot of money that is then someone's
mm,
distributing to people to pay for their health care. Until you understand, that's why I focus a lot on understanding systems and what things really mean practically, because that sounds like a really noble objective. Yeah, let's all pool our money together so that poor people can have healthcare and access to the same healthcare that we do. Not understanding necessarily that it's not going into a pot that's then distributed directly to those people. It's going to a government and a system that is subsidizing private insurance, thereby jacking up the cost. And now, well, what are we sitting in right now is an environment of increasing healthcare costs. So and I'm not saying that means that you should be for or against universal health
yep.
care. I'm saying it's much more nuanced than that.